So today, there was a lot of very pivotal activist moments in the 90s. First of all, so today, this video is going out on 7th July, SABASABA Day, which was on July 7th, 1990 in Kenya. And it's a very, very, very significant SABASABA because the spirit of what happened around the Reject Finance Bill is almost like reawakening that milestone moment on 7th July 1990. It's also my dad's birthday, which is pretty cool. My dad's kind of an activist, by the way. I feel like a lot of what I've learned or witnessed around advocacy and activism was my parents. I remember so clearly being a child watching the release of Nelson Mandela on TV in the year 1990. It's almost like that image is ingrained in my mind. And this is what I remember. My dad and mom, because I don't know about you guys, but a lot of our folks were not folks for showing my emotions back in the day. Mambo ya kulia na kuhug. And what the image I have of that day is my dad and mom, oh my gosh, they were crying. So they were standing in front of the TV saying, oh my goodness, we can't believe this. And they were standing watching the TV. I was 6 years old, so I was pretty tiny, my brothers, my sister, and we were all trying to figure out what was going on. And the song Release, Release, Release Mandela was playing, and it was obviously one of the most iconic global moments in history. And that was the clearest memories I have of 1990. And then there was SABASABA and seeing snippets of it on the news. And then 2 years after that, in 92, seeing the arrest and detention of Wangari Maathai. So I don't know if we've realized it or maybe we haven't, but there's been such a full circle moment of a lot of these pivotal moments that have led to what we saw towards the end of June 2024. And I know that there's several concerts, there's convenings and conversations that are happening today that you guys need to be plugged into, because I can very confidently say that a majority of Kenyans this time around were very much where our fathers and mothers were in 1990 when protests and demonstrations happened across 6 towns in Kenya, fighting for a free election, and people died and people were detained and people were injured. It's literally what happened on that really terrifying Tuesday the other day when we lost so many innocent lives. And so this is the first time a lot of us have been on the same side of history, wanting the same kind of justice and fairness. And I think the audacity of how it happened has been talked about enough. I can't even speak more to how Gen Z and millennials essentially were leading that. And I want to paint some context. On 7th July 1990, Kenyans across 6 towns took to the streets to demand free elections. No police commanders or their officers were charged for human rights violations. With 41 deaths, 1,009 arrests, 32 abductions in 20 counties over the last 3 weeks, Kenya finds itself in another defining political moment. This is according to the Standard. Because the Reject Finance Bill 2024 movement is, even though it's different from the Second Liberation leaders, it's led by people in their teens, 20s, and 30s. They talk about leaderless, but I like how somebody put it as, no, in fact, you guys are leader full. You're full of leaders. Leaderless in the sense of what we see as leadership, right? It's a certain person who makes the decisions, who calls the shots, and a lot of that has been put into question and disrupted. I'm stating very obvious things here, but what I'm really going back to is the significance of this particular SABASABA. In fact, the hashtag has been #NewSabasaba. So a lot of us were children in 1990. Some of us are now millennials. And raising Gen Alphas. There's all these incredible intergenerational moments happening, and they're happening now, and they're happening at a time when we will never, ever, ever be the same again. And the conversation is continuing to shift, right? It started with the Reject Finance Bill. It went into the injustice and the inhumane killings. It went into a presidential interview. It went into a president on X. Lord knows what we're going to see next. And I know for a fact that the way things have been done before can never be done the same way. The way cabinets are going to be set up, the way leadership is going to be redefined, the way corruption is going to be addressed and interrogated, and the way leaders are going to emerge. That, for me, is possibly one of the most important things that we're going to see happen. And I spoke to two pretty incredible individuals, one of whom had very close proximity to the unfortunate shootings that took place in Rongai that Tuesday in June, when we really saw the deaths and murders that came out of these protests. And the other one is somebody who has always kind of integrated activism into his art and poetry. And he said something interesting, because I asked him, what kind of leaders do we want, or are we looking for? And he said, I think we need to process and internalize and let this moment sit with us a bit more before we begin to identify the kind of leaders that we'll need or want. I thought that was a very interesting observation. So bottom line is, today's July 7th, SABASABA. Go back into history, read about the importance of that turning point in 1990 in Kenya that was calling for free elections. This particular turning point that's calling for, honestly, for just freeness, fairness, justice, transparency, accountability, and the right kind of leadership that doesn't entail gaslighting and bullying. Talk to people who were there, 34 years ago, and then talk to those who have been a part of what we've seen. Have a lot of conversations. Let's educate ourselves more, civic education, history. And let's pay attention to this turning point, some of which we'll see immediate results of it, and some of which will be a long time from now. What we saw in 1990 has led to what we saw this year in many ways. So imagine how incredible it will be to see what 2024 looks like 10 years or 20 years or 30 years from now. More on that interview on Friday. It was a very honest, raw, insightful conversation. And I don't even want to say so much more in terms of sometimes just the compromise of being a Kenyan in what I believe is one of the most incredible countries in the world, with some of the smartest, most talented people in the world, on the continent, and yet the constant price you have to pay when you're just trying to do you. Gachi is going to give us a little bit more insights into that with this piece.
This is how your country will kill you. Your country will kill you over the election, as usual. Your country will kill you for a vote you cast, for a vote you didn't cast, for a vote you're not old enough to cast. Your country will then splay you on screens. Your country will spray you on front pages. Look at the specimen of a thief, a ruffian, a thug, an uncouth youth found in his usual habitat, crime, dressed in the usual attire, jeans, poverty, and a defiant attitude, tousled hair and walking on foot. Your country will kill you for being a woman. It will stab you in your own house. It will carry an axe cross country and defend it. Call you an investment that should never say no, that murder is a justified consequence of jilting men. This country will rape and stab you when you're 7 months pregnant. Then it will let the murderer thrive. Your country will drop you from a balcony with a bullet. It will drag you out of a house and smash your head in with a club. Your country will murder you before you're old enough to know what it means to belong to a country. Your country will kill you in the streets. Head smashed in by a boot your tax bought. It will choke you in tear gas and chase you across town. Your country will fire live bullets when all you're holding are placards and hopes and hopes and hopes. Your country will kill your hopes, dip you in deep frustration. It will crush all hope of ever making something of yourself. And after it's done, your country will kill any chance of your story getting told. Your country will erase your existence. But we, as your country people, shall say your name. Rex Masai, Credo Oyaro, Kennedy Onyango. I'm sorry this country did not let you grow up. we shall say your name. Belinda Achieng, Frank Okoth, Nick Adams, Eric Njero, Eric Otieno, we shall say your name. David Chege, Belinda Achieng, Edwin Otieno, Eric Shieni, we shall say your name. Beasley Kamau, Erickson Mutisia, Dr. Margaret Oyuga, you were just taking care of us in the street. Ibrahim Kamau Wanjiko, Emmanuel Tata, we shall say your name. Brian Lemayan Kasaine, Cholding Malang, Eric Kiratu, Austin Onyisa, Matthew Njoroge, we shall say your name. Every single name that will join this list and every single name that is yet to be identified. We shall say it and keep you in our hearts.